Hello everyone, welcome to the Fly Racing GNCC post-race show here on digitaloffroad.com. I'm your host, Jason Hooper, flying solo this week. No special rockstar guest from the motocross and supercross world. Jason Wygant's not here, so I wasn't able to find a suitable replacement, so I'm going to do my best to bring you the recap from today's race here at the Maxxis General GNCC in Washington, Georgia at the Aonia Pass Motocross Park. We'll just jump right into it, try and keep it a little bit shorter than last week's recap, which was nearly 17 minutes, I think. But that's what happens when you get Weege involved in things. So right off the start, we had Paul Whibley jump out to a hole shot again for the second week in a row. And if you guys remember, Whibley won last week, and he won in this race in 2011. So when he gets out front here, it was looking like maybe this could be back-to-back wins for Whibley. And then about halfway through the first lap, Wibbs is back about third or fourth. We've got Russell Bobbitt moving into the lead. We had Thad Duvall in the lead. Russell Bobbitt passes him. We had some crazy stuff going on, and especially since Russell crashed in the first turn, which was pretty nuts. You think maybe 6 miles into the race, 8 miles into the race, and he's into the lead. So it was all sorts of carnage, but we had our regular players up there. We had Charlie Mullins up in that group. We had Corey Buttrick, Caleb Russell, and we had a lot of guys going on up there. And it was a pretty good race until things kind of started to separate themselves, and we got that pack up front that we kind of figured would be the top three, going into this season. Paul Whibley, Charlie Mullins, and Caleb Russell. Caleb crashed out of Florida after running up front, had a shoulder injury, then apparently crashed again last week while practicing, injured his other shoulder, so he was kind of a big question mark, and I don't know if that was one of those things he was kind of telling people that he was maybe more hurt than he really was. But as the race wore on, we just watched those guys battle, and Whibley controlled the lead for a good portion of the race, and then Charlie controlled it for a while, and Caleb just kind of hung back there for a little bit. Then with a couple laps to go, he made his moved up into first place, and then we had another train coming because Nate Canny, who coming off of a not so good ride in Florida, moved his way up into fourth, and he was only 3 seconds off of Paul Whibley in fourth. Then we had Thad Duvall just a few seconds behind him in fifth. And it was looking like maybe the two guys, Caleb Russell and Nate Canny, who didn't finish in Florida, might end up being the guys that stole some podium spots here in Georgia. But Canny wasn't able to hold that pace. He set a really fast lap with a few laps to go, worked his way up there, but wasn't able to hold the pace. But the guy that was able to hold the pace was Caleb Russell, and he just pulled out to a pretty nice lead. It was 14 seconds, 15 seconds, 18 seconds, 20 seconds. He was out front, and he was just pinning it and looked pretty solid. And you could tell that it wasn't the usual Charlie Mullins and Paul Whibley behind him. Not to take anything away from Caleb's win, because it was a solid ride for sure. But you could tell in that last lap, the spark just wasn't there. The spark that we saw on that last lap in Florida, when Paul and Charlie dropped the hammer, it just didn't look like they were able to have anything for him. And not to say that even if they would have charged, if they would have, the way Caleb was riding at the end, I'm not exactly sure they would have been able to reel him in and/or make a pass. But by the time the finish came around, things got separated just a little bit there. Caleb had at least 20 seconds when he got here, and then it was at least 3 to 5 seconds, probably 5 seconds or so. I haven't seen the official timing from Charlie to Paul. And then we had Nate Canny did finish fourth. He held off a charge from Thad Duvall there at the end, and then Thad wound up fifth. So got to give a shout out to Nate. I talked to him yesterday, and he was pretty upset with himself after that ride in Florida. He just he said, there's hundreds of kids out there that would kill to have the job that I have, and I pulled off and quit. And he said the setup wasn't 100% right for Florida, but he was confident that they had things sorted out for Georgia, and he proved it. He put in a really, really solid ride. It was the best I've seen him look on that Honda. We watched him at the Burnt Gin Hare Scramble a while ago and the National Enduro, and he it seemed like he was still trying to find himself on the Honda. And a fourth place ride. He had some struggles last year. Didn't get off on the right foot in Florida, but it was really, really good to see Nate back up there battling and showing some of that speed that we all know he has it. He's a guy that's he's won this race before. He's had some really, really solid races, and we know he's a guy that should be battling for race wins and podiums. And maybe here in the coming weeks we'll see him once he gets that bike figured out. And Thad finished in the top 5. And that's 2 races in a row that Thad's finished. That's kind of been the thing that everybody said about Thad the past few years, is that he just can't finish races. And, maybe it would be better if he just, backed it down a notch, didn't ride at 100%, rode at 85% and got some top fives, because he's another guy with the speed that we know could win races, and he could check out for a little bit, but he has a tendency to wind up on his head. So got to give a big shout out to him for that, because, it's maybe shown a little bit of maturity. He's had some troubles keeping that Honda together in the natural enduros, but he hasn't, 2 GNCCs and he's finished. So that's a pretty solid step in the right direction for old Bad Thad. So that was good. And we'll check in on the XC2 Pro Lights class. That's kind of the class that everybody's been talking about this year, because we've got Stuart Baylor in it, and he finished in the top 3 overall in Florida. I was like, well, now we're getting back in even more familiar terrain. Is he going to be able to do it? Is Jason Thomas going to be able to to battle back and take a win or take a podium after a not so good race? And it was pretty much the same old thing that you would expect. Kind of like we had those guys in XC1 that you would expect to be up front. We had the guys in XC2 that you would expect to be up front. We had Stuart Baylor, Jason Thomas, and Glenn Carney up front battling from pretty much the get-go in that race. Cody Gregg grabbed the whole shot, but by the time we saw those guys for the first time, we had the Huskies and Stuart Baylor out front. We were missing Jesse Robinson. He talked to him, and he just struggled all day. But it was a really, really good race for the top 3. That was probably the most exciting battle there for a while, because those guys seemed to be changing positions maybe a little bit more than those XC1 guys. Stewart would lead, then Thomas would lead, and Carney would just keep it close for the majority of the race. And with a couple laps to go, Glenn stuck it into a mud hole, and he dropped back well over a minute off the pace. But Thomas was keeping Baylor honest, and when we came to the finish, Stu was able to grab the win, but Thomas had him in his sights, and he even said on the podium it's been a long time since he's been able to finish within eyesight of Stuart Baylor finishing. And I think that does a lot for his confidence. And, at the same time, Stuart Baylor is going to have some serious confidence. He's won 2 races in a row from different ways, from good starts, from bad starts. And I know he probably feels like he's got these guys in check. But, getting Jason Thomas a little bit of confidence. Maybe if he can find that mojo that he had a few years ago when he was constantly battling with Caleb Russell for wins and finishing in better overall, maybe this thing's going to get a little bit interesting in the XC2 class. And I know he wasn't very happy after his performance in Florida, so now there's going to be a big opening for the 3rd spot in that class, because Glenn is flying back to Australia. So it's going to be interesting to see. Jed Haynes rode a solid race today in 4th, and if Glenn wasn't here, he would have been the 3rd place guy there for a while. And Jesse Robinson struggled, but he was able to work his way back up. So there's in both classes we've had some guys that have clearly separated themselves from the pack. In the XC1 class, Paul Whibley, Charlie Mullins, and Caleb Russell ran a pace today for the entire 3 hours that no one else in the class was able to handle. And the same thing in the XC2 class. Glenn's going to be gone, but Stuart Baylor and Jason Thomas today showed that they are, without a doubt, the top 2 guys in the class. And some of the other guys are going to have a lot of work to do if they're going to want to get up there and battle for wins. There's going to be a 3rd spot open on that podium, but I think if Jesse Robinson rides the way he's capable of riding, those are going to be the top 3 guys battling for those podiums week in, week out. And we've got a couple weeks break. It's been a long week here, especially for us having to shoot the ATVs and the bikes. It's been a hectic few days here, but everybody's packing up and getting out of here. It's probably the quickest I've ever seen anyone leave a GNCC before ever. The pits are clearing out fast, and I think we're going to do the same thing. I've talked enough. You've got the race recap. Make sure you keep it tuned here to digitaloffroad.com for all sorts of updates from the GNCCs. Make sure you keep up with GNCCracing.com for the live time and scoring. And that's pretty much it. I'll see you guys in a couple weeks from Steel Creek.